Hey everyone, before I begin, I have created a Discord server for a long time, but people are not joining. I will appreciate it if you joined. You will find the link in description. With that, let's begin. What just happened? Aizawa's tired but shocked tone rang through the monitor room as the entire UA staff looked at the screen, watching as his no Lucifer planted several bombs in the hero building after slitting the throat of a sleeping Kanoko and putting the fear of the devil in Ibara. So much happened in one day so fast that they could barely process it, and it all started with this morning. Teacher's POV War Day 1. When did Problem Child change so much? What's going on? Confusion ran through Aizawa's psyche, and emotions as one of his students was so much different from what they had previously thought. Thinking back on what Nezu had said earlier about Izuku not trusting them, Aizawa could only think Nezu was right. I'm his homeroom teacher, yet he doesn't trust me. Goddammit, I shouldn't have accused him without giving him so much as a chance to explain himself. All I did was yell and lash out at him like an amateur. Aizawa felt guilt and remorse as he remembered when Izuku was accused, and how he, of all people who acknowledge all possibilities using logic and understanding, threw everything he could at an innocent kid just because he felt it was needed. Shaking his head, Aizawa banished these thoughts. After all, he still had to get the hero team in the game area, and with Izuku asleep, this was a perfect time. Arriving at the dorms, it was barely reaching 4:30 a.m. Walking in, he saw a few of the early risers up and already ready, some having bags of clothes and other necessities like they were going on vacation. Ada being one of the few up, spotted Aizawa. Aizawa-sensei, good morning. A few members of the class are still gathering their things. Where is Class B? We'll get them after everybody here is ready, so tell everyone they have 10 minutes or they're disqualified from the game. Watching, Aizawa saw Ida run up the stairs, alerting his classmates when hearing yelled confirmations, including the hero leader himself. I got it, Sonic the Hedgehog, now fuck off. Language. Ignoring that entire conversation, Aizawa turned to the rest of the class that was up. Jiro, Yorazu, Ashido, Shoji, Koda, and Takoyami all eating a light breakfast, chatting with each other. They are certainly different. Aizawa could see clear as day that his students weren't all that serious about the game, which was a stark contrast from the cold and calculated look Izuku had shown and given both when they were picking him up and when he was let loose. Aizawa had seen the disconnect ever since the betrayal incident, but he didn't realize till now how separated Izuku was from his class, and not to mention the appearance changes as well. It had taken roughly 8 minutes when everyone had finally come to the common room. Seeing the class all there, Aizawa spoke loudly, catching everyone's attention. All right, now that you're all here, we are going to pick up Class 1B and go to the game area. Now, the villain has been released in the area before you, but is currently preoccupied, so we will be taking you to your HQ, and from there it's up to all of you. Now follow me. Explaining it quite simple, Aizawa ignored the raised hands of some students as he was on a schedule, and it would be better if he got the hero team in their HQ before Izuku woke up. Going to the 1B dorms, Aizawa, unlike his class, saw every student ready and packed, waiting patiently for him while some small chatter was going on. Why couldn't I have taken this class? Sighing, Aizawa gathered 1B before he took them to the large bus that was transporting both classes. Sit where you want, just get in. With that, both classes got inside the bus, separating into their own little groups, some obvious like Uraraka sitting with and Tsu and Bakugo by himself, saying he didn't need some shitty extra sitting by him. Done with that, the bus started moving, heading to the desired destination with some idle chatter going on. Uraraka, sitting next to some of her best friends, fidgeted in her seat, nervous, which both friends took account of. Tsu, being the blunt one, spoke up. Achako, what's wrong, Ribbit? Yes, if there's anything, please let us know. Smiling at her friend's support, Uraraka relaxed a little bit. Sorry, I'm just nervous that we have to fight Deku. He's really strong, but there's so many of us, I just think it's a little unfair. Yes, well, I agree, lest we not forget that Midoriya wanted to be alone on his team, and even though he is on the villain team, it's very heroic and inspiring that he's pushing against the odds. Ada, praising Izuku, looked at Uraraka, who listened carefully. Ada's right, Ribbit. Midoriya is very smart, so I don't think this will be a bad game, though it is unfair, Ribbit. I know, but I'm just worried. He looked sad that he was alone, and I kinda feel guilty. With her selective memory, Uraraka remembered how Izuku had his head down once he saw the teams. Well, we sadly made our choice, but we will just have to support Midoriya by giving it our all. Give it our all. Don't make me laugh, you shitty Sonic. We'll wipe the floor with that shitty nerd. It seems Bakugo had heard the conversation from his seat, so yelling, he told everyone how he saw this game, and most of the classes agreed with him. Hey, Bakugo, Dek, be quiet. Before Uraraka could defend her love, Aizawa stood up from his seat, glaring at the entire bus, his eyes red and quirk activated. This isn't time to underestimate your opponent. That's what most rookie heroes do before they die, remember that. Sitting back down, Aizawa heard all chatter quiet to whispers, and while some of the group, mostly the ones who thought Izuku could at least draw the game out to 2 days, agreed, but other than that, each student had the same thought as Bakugo. He's just one villain, how hard can it be? Aizawa-sensei is seriously overestimating Midoriya. That damn shitty Deku, even with All Might's quirk, this will all be over soon. Underestimate him. I'm just saying how it is. In his seat, Aizawa sat silent. The heroes were in for a big surprise. If Izuku had really changed like he thought, then this would be a hard time, and Aizawa didn't know how right he was. After dropping the heroes off at their HQ in the game arena, Aizawa headed back to the monitor room while the hero team got set up. Walking into the room, Aizawa sat in his seat while the rest of the staff also sat by. Thank you for picking my students up, Aizawa. I just wonder how they're gonna do against Midoriya. Vlad King, expressing his gratitude, bowed to his fellow teacher before saying what was on his mind. Yeah, on the ride here I can tell that neither of our classes is ready for this, but by that same right we'll have to see what this Midoriya will do. Leaning back in his chair, Aizawa watched as the hero team set up their own rooms, Bakugo expressly saying he didn't give a shit what they did. The teachers watched impassively until it reached 5:30, the alarm from Izuku's phone catching the attention of every staff member. Well, it seems our villain is awake. Nezu, calling it out, had every pair of eyes on the main villain, watching as Izuku got up, foregoing his pills before heading to the supplies Nezu provided for him. Nezu, what else did young Midoriya request? Watching, All Might saw his successor take out pairs of clothes along with a small case which he couldn't identify. Midoriya asked me for some supplies such as clothes and colored contacts, stating he wanted civilian attire for an identity. It's brilliant. While some villains are recognizable, some have a civilian cover too, lest they want to be caught. Watching, the teachers were impressed by Izuku's foresight. They continued watching. Izuku started taking off his shirt as more of his tattoo was revealed. Midnight, looking at Izuku's body, licked her lips, but before she could say something, Izuku turned his back, scaring her. Everybody was able to see the scars that riddled his back, and while they thought the ones on his arms were horrible, this was something else. Cutting off the camera as Izuku started taking his other clothes off, Nezu allowed the teachers to absorb the situation. How did EG get those scars? Shocked, it was Midnight who put her hands to her mouth. Sure, she had seen some pretty messed up things in her career, but the scars Izuku had were abundant and looked like they had been there for years. Like this. No arm scars, just the back. Aizawa had never seen these even during training, and none of his other students knew about this either, or they would have told him. First, the appearance changes. Okay, Aizawa could accept that it was his weird quirk acting up, but the scars. There wasn't any way that those deep and faded scars were from this year. Turning to the school's nurse, Aizawa saw sadness deep within her old eyes. Recovery girl, you had to have seen these before. Did he tell you anything about how he got them? I'm afraid not. Though I've seen the scars, he outright refused to tell me, saying I didn't need to know, but I have an outline of how he got them. What, how? Aizawa, before I was UAS nurse, I worked regularly in a hospital. While becoming a hero, I've seen injuries of almost every kind, so I know what they are. On his back, there are scars of quirk usage, fire being a large part, while the rest are various stabs, cuts, and many more. More and more secrets were being revealed to the staff, and with each one, they felt a sense of failure. Young Midoriya, staying silent this whole time, was All Might. Like Recovery Girl, he had seen the scars, especially when Midoriya first got OFA, but when he tried to speak about it to Izuku, the young boy, for the first time he had seen him do such a thing, ignored him. All Might, of all people, telling him it wasn't his problem to deal with. In fact, thinking about it, the Izuku they saw last night was similar to the one at that time. Waiting for a few minutes, they heard something move from the monitor, and turning the video back on, they saw Midoriya, thankfully dressed, moving the dining room table which his sniper was sat upon before climbing atop it, looking out the window through the scope. That's good, he's scoping his enemy out before he makes a move, and from the comfort of a gun and a long distance away. Hearing Snipe compliment Izuku on his tactic, they agreed it was much smarter to scope your enemy out instead of just rushing in like many villains in this game had done in the past. I don't fucking care, man. Hands. Make your own teams and hunt that fucking Deku down, and you better tell me if you find him or I'll fucking kill you. Cleaning out their ears, the entire staff looked at the monitor that displayed the hero team, the loud noise of Bakugo's voice diminishing the quiet nature of Midoriya, who had yet to speak a single word. Despite that, the staff watched as Bakugo kept yelling at the Class 1B's president, going on and on that he didn't care who went in a patrol squad, just that they got out there and stopped wasting their time berating Izuku all the while. Well, it seems the hero leader isn't a leader at all. He shows no care in the work, he just wants to find Midoriya. 13, watching the screen, shook her head in disappointment. Aizawa could only shake his head, a bit embarrassed about his student, while present Mike complained. Jesus, that kid is louder than me, and it's only like this when Midoriya is involved. He really needs to learn. He is foregoing any strategy, leaving it to his team members completely. Yes, but surely Midoriya sees this and will use it to his advantage. Nezu, sipping a cup of tea, looked as Kendo started forming teams per Bakugo's request before he looked back at Izuku, who got off the table grabbing his pistols along with capture wire provided by Nezu himself before Izuku left his apartment, putting on a baseball cap hiding his identity. Getting on the street level, the staff watched as Izuku walked through the streets, blending in with the crowd easily. A few times they even lost track of Izuku, which only accentuated how good Midoriya was at this. So far, however, Nezu waited. He still hadn't been contacted about any bombs Izuku had set the night before. What's he doing? Why is he going towards the hero patrols? Confused, Midnight watched as Izuku slowly got closer to the patrol groups as they split off. You're right, Midoriya could have stayed in the apartment and observed unless he has an agenda and wants to start the game. Hound Dog, looking at all the hero patrols, narrowed his eyes as Izuku got closer to a single group that had all four of what a hero patrol should be: a capture, a powerhouse, a recon, and support. Watching, they saw the group get hounded by fans of the hero, Sato quickly being separated from the group with a large number of people around him. It was then the staff saw Izuku make his move, luring Sato, who couldn't see through his disguise, into an alley, claiming he heard screams. Sato should have contacted his group by now. They should know to always relay their location if they are investigating an area, especially if a report that a villain was killing someone. Not only that, but he should have his quirk at the ready. Looking at the screen critically, Aizawa pointed out every mistake Sato made as they all saw Izuku walk behind him before getting the student to turn around, where they witnessed firsthand a taste of Izuku's cruelty and power. They saw Izuku effortlessly break Sato's nose before twisting and kicking the hero into the wall, breaking some bricks, clearly showing that even though it wasn't as strong as they had seen him go, it was a lot. Oh my, Sato's nose is broken and he's most likely suffering from a concussion. Midoriya is still holding back Recovery Girl's comment in assessment. He's taking down one of the many powerhouses in the game. Turning back to the monitor, they saw Sato reaching for some sugar before Midoriya stepped on his hand, making the heroes cringe in pain. Problem child. Aizawa had never seen this type of brutality from Izuku, and it didn't help that once Izuku pulled his pistol out, that his eyes were filled with hate and disgust. All the heroes who worked with Izuku saw his eyes firsthand, the rage and hate-riddled stare of disgust, as if he had just crushed a bug that had the audacity to annoy him. So it seems that wasn't just a one-time thing. Nezu, looking at Izuku, remembered the night of team selections, the same eyes Izuku had shown as he saw everyone against him, though it was well hidden then. You're strong, but definitely not the smartest. You should have tried to escape after the first hit, or at least call for some backup, letting the other heroes know of your location. Yet you neglected that. Tusk, tusk, tusk. The staff all watched as Izuku mocked Sato, toying with the hero as he looked like a disappointed father. It only got worse as Izuku grinned, and the staff saw Sato visibly become frightened and spooked, and they couldn't blame him. Something about Izuku's grin was off-putting. It wasn't a grin of anger, taunting, nor happy, just vindictive, cold. Well, now that you're like this, you can't be of help to anyone in the hero team. Don't worry, I have the perfect way you could help me. However, the mocking tone of Izuku came back full force. Before everyone in the monitor room was surprised if they thought the earlier confrontation with Sato was brutal, it was nothing once Izuku stepped down harder, a loud snapping that came from Sato's fingers before he was kicked into the wall headfirst. They all could only stare wide-eyed. It was clear Izuku already had Sato beat. He could have just pulled the trigger of his pistol and Sato would have been called out. It wasn't necessary for Izuku to break Sato's hand before kicking him into a brick wall. They were all confused and scared. The ball of sunshine that was Izuku Midoriya was seemingly replaced with his polar opposite, a brutal and unforgiving kid. In fact, there wasn't a hint of remorse in Izuku's eyes as he did his action. Aizawa, putting a hand to his comm, was about to call out Sato's elimination when Izuku spoke up on his comms. Nezu, don't take Sato out yet, you're not gonna wanna miss the show. Looking back at Nezu, the entire staff silently pleaded for him to just call Sato out, but after a moment he answered, "Very well, Sato is still in the game." Shutting off his earpiece, Nezu was hounded on by Aizawa and essentially the entire staff. Nezu, you should have called Sato out. There's no way he could recover from those injuries to fight still. Sato was knocked out. Just because Midoriya made a promise of a show doesn't mean you should have let it happen. Silence. Yelling out Nezu effectively silenced the staff. They had never seen Nezu react that way. Calming down, Nezu looked to his staff. Do you not all see what has happened? The secrets Midoriya keeps. His eyes were that of hate and rage. The fact he doesn't let even All Might, his own idol, know any information means he doesn't trust us. We all have seen the disconnect between Midoriya and the class as well. If he feels betrayed by us, what's to say it isn't the same for his classmates? Explaining it out loudly, Nezu saw the eyes of the staff turn thoughtful before realization crossed their faces. But sir, even with that, we can't let him hurt our students like that. He has not done anything excessive. I gave him clear guidelines on how much he was allowed to hurt the opposite team, and anything permanent hasn't happened, has it? Looking at Recovery Girl, he silently asked a question, of which Recovery Girl shook her head no. We have all seen his personality, and he's been harboring this anger for a while. It's better if he were to release it in an environment that we can monitor and control. If need be, we'll eject him from the game, and it will be Hound Dog's job to help him and if need be reform Midoriya. The staff, hearing this, reluctantly agreed. If this will help Izuku go back to the way he was before all of this anger, then they would allow him to do so, to what is reasonable. Turning back to the screen, they saw Izuku take Sato to his original villain lair before going to his apartment grabbing the C4S, and no matter how many times they saw it, the staff always got a little tense watching. They saw Izuku walk into the hospital of the Mock City before sneaking through, planting the bombs in various locations before leaving, heading to his apartment once again. But before that, Izuku's voice came through Nezu's earpiece. "Nezu, you may want to evacuate the hospital and the surrounding area. That will be handled immediately." Turning his earpiece off, they saw Izuku grin once more, the same one he gave Sato. Things were going to get worse, that the staff was sure of. It has been hours, and there wasn't any movement from Izuku. Nezu decided it would be best to monitor the heroes, leaving Izuku to set up his so-called show, which again caused some uproar from the teachers, but they accepted it. They still haven't started searching for Sato, and Bakugo is refusing to spend any time searching for anybody that isn't Midoriya. Maybe we should have picked someone else to lead the hero team. Aizawa, pinching the bridge of his nose, looked at the hero team. No organization, no care, and the rest are too afraid to stand up to Bakugo for the sake of a fellow hero. God, what a mess. It was plain for everyone spectating that the hero team leader didn't care for anything other than ending the game. There wasn't any cooperation between the leader and his team, which only accentuated the actual difference between the villains and the heroes. Where Midoriya is methodical, opportunistic, impatient, Bakugo was the opposite, brash and headstrong. Bakugo's word is law was what the UA staff had seen through just a little of the interactions in the team. So far, faith in the hero team was diminishing, but they can't just outright give up that the heroes can catch Midoriya. Keeping their eyes on the monitor, they watched as Setsuna and a few others gathered in the common room, turning the TV on only for it to be interrupted and cut to black with the same thing happening to every channel, a red digital countdown ticking. Is something wrong with the arena? Why are all the feeds cut? Power loader, was this supposed to happen? Turning to the support hero present, Mike asked the question on everyone's mind. No, the only reason this could happen was if there was an emergency broadcast coming from the news station. This has to be Midoriya. He did say he wanted to put on a show, so let's watch, shall we? Pressing a single button, the largest monitor in the room switched to the feed that was being fed to the TVs in the Mock City. Slowly the counter went down, and the teachers all felt a sense of dread wash over them when the counter finally reached 0. Watching, they saw a single light flash before a robot head was clear to the teachers as it started moving around erratically, confusing everyone as they hadn't programmed the robots to have that type of movement. Just as they were going to question it, they heard sounds of muffled screaming come from the screen, of which most of the heroes recognize. No, don't tell me he has real hostages, was the main thought within everyone's heads. Those muffled screams sounded too real. They didn't have the metallic and robotic tone that usually accompanied the robots. SHHHH, the show hasn't even started yet. Chills ran down the teachers' backs as Izuku stepped into view, his features and mask giving an almost paranormal and demonic appearance to their student. His tone of voice cold, his presence on the TV had them all wanting to freeze. All Might, on the other hand, was reminded of one person as he bit his lip. All for one, Izuku had the same feeling as if he was staring into the personification of evil. Nezu had the same feeling as All Might. His instinct to defend himself as if he were facing a predator in the wild came full force. Reining in their emotions, they waited as Izuku spoke once more. Hello viewers and heroes that are watching this live. I am the villain Lucifer, and I welcome you to a sight to behold. As if Izuku were a showman, he opened his arms, the rest of the lights coming to life as the teacher's fears were confirmed. There were mixes of real and robot hostages, while the robot man was tied to a chair, a cloth covering their body. Seeing the real hostages, the teachers got anxious. Though they highly doubted Izuku would hurt them, anything could happen. There was one, however, that looked at Izuku in curiosity. The choice of name was odd, of course, but there was something connected with Izuku and the name. Lucifer, one of God's angels cast away from heaven and into the depths of hell for his pride, wanting to be in a position that was exclusive to God. But why that name? Now, before you all start panicking, I'll tell you I am currently residing in the local news station, taking control of the airwaves. And before you start racing to come after, I want you to see what happens when someone tries to be a hero. Snapping back to attention, the staff were confused on why he gave the hero team his location, but before they could express this concern out loud, Izuku threw the black cover off of the middle robot, revealing a sight familiar to every person of the staff. That's Sato's costume. Midnight, pointing, pronounced what they all recognized, but what didn't make sense was the robot head until they thought further on it, and the realization scared them. They had stated the robots were supposed to represent real-life people and civilians, so the robot head on a body that belonged to Sato could only mean one thing. Izuku covered Sato's head with the face of a civilian, basically making Sato wear a mask made from the people he was supposed to protect. Nezu was brought back to his first cue, and with Izuku remembering one question. To what extent can I hurt the members of the other team? I see. Well, anything except for killing and permanent immobilization is allowed. Remembering that question and his answer, Nezu realized something. He never mentioned psychological attacks or trauma. Turning to Hound Dog, he got the counselor's attention. Hound Dog, I must ask you to clear your schedule after this game is over. If I'm right, Midoriya may not be your only patient. Hearing Nezu say this, Hound Dog was alarmed before turning back to Sato. What Nezu said was true. If this was real and Sato was forced to wear the skin of a person's face on his own, therapy would be needed. Of course. Now earlier today, a hero by the name Sugarman stopped to help a citizen in need. Now being the best hero he diligently followed the citizen, ignoring all signs of potential danger, not even letting his fellow heroes know about his location. Looking back at the screen, they saw Izuku activate his quirk before digging his fingertips into the robot's head before tearing it in half, and the beaten and bloody form of Sato was revealed. God problem child, why? Aizawa didn't recognize Izuku anymore, his cold eyes staring directly at him as his other student was beaten and bloody. This is bad. The heroes can't save Sato, not with him in the building as Midoriya's hostages. All they can do is watch. Flag King was very worried about his class and Aizawa's. They had no way to win this hostage situation. Ah, poor Sugarman. Heroes, I have but a single question. How are villains made? The teachers watched as Izuku taunted Sugarman and the hero team as he walked over to one of the many hostages he had in the room. Let's see, it could be a villainous quirk. Rough childhood, abusive parents, bullying, being born quirkless, but my favorite one so far is betrayal. Hearing this, the teachers were silent, no thoughts in their head, only the crushing guilt clouding their minds as he stated betrayal. Sitting silently, they thought of the other reasons he also stated into them. It made perfect sense, but there was one who knew more than they let on. Quirkless. Young Midoriya was quirkless. Does that mean? Looking at his mentor, All Might felt nervous he could let go of what Izuku was doing, but it reached a point when Izuku crushed one of his hostages' heads before digging his heel into another student. The teachers tensed, gripping whatever they had their hands on before Izuku spoke once more. Yes, betrayal is my favorite reason. Now you may wonder why. It's simple. All my life I was betrayed by those I let close to me, over the fact I was quirkless. My childhood friend turned into my worst bully, beating me every day for 12 years. My father left me a year after I was labeled quirkless. My mother turned on me, becoming an alcoholic drunk, abusing me nonstop every day and night. After years of this treatment, I was at a breaking point, but I refused to give up until the last day of middle school. After the usual treatment, I was told by my bully to kill myself. He wasn't the first to do it, but he was the last, and after that school had ended, so walking a different route home when I met my idol All Might. Being the hopeful boy I was, I asked if I could be a hero while I was quirkless, and instead of living up to his words of everyone can be a hero, he simply told me no, throwing my dreams and hopes into the trash as it lit on fire. Anger was all the teachers could see as Izuku tore through a few of the robot hostages, but they didn't focus on that. The story Midoriya had told caused them to go catatonic. They couldn't discern whether or not this was real, but turning to All Might, they, unfortunately, got their answer, causing Aizawa to speak out. Dear God, Midoriya was being abused, beaten down. We didn't do anything to stop it. I should have noticed the signs. Aizawa could only berate himself. He had seen Izuku's interaction with Bakugo, how he flinched at the slightest contact, expecting to be hit with something or by someone, but he thought it was the boy's shy nature. Aizawa wasn't the only one, however. The staff also felt like this was their fault. Midoriya was acting out now. They heard what he said about being quirkless, but they didn't think much of it as there weren't very many reports of the quirkless being abused, that they just skimmed over the possibility, but this caused them to open their eyes as Izuku's scars came back to their mind. All Might could only attempt to wipe the tears in his eyes. How did I not notice? So much time. I could have helped him. All Might covered his face. He had interacted with Inko face to face. The way she seemed so sweet and loving to Izuku should have been a clear signal that things weren't what they seemed. Izuku's body, when he was first training, the way he was so skinny and malnourished looking, and All Might just ignored it. The poor boy, the knife marks, the cuts, stabs, they must have come from home and we failed to see it. I failed. Recovery girl valued her patience above all else, but she couldn't help Izuku the way she wanted to. All Might, was it true about what he said about you crushing his dreams? All Might. All Might. Aizawa, glaring at the symbol of peace, got his answer. Why, yes, what young Midoriya had said was true. I thought it was best to tell him that he couldn't be a hero if he was quirkless, yet I saw how wrong I was after he tried to save Bakugo. I regret everything I said. I changed my mind, and after giving him OFA I did all I could to make it up to the boy, but I threw that away. All Might couldn't blame Izuku for revealing his story. With All Might rejecting his dream, he deserved everything Izuku said against him. Before the rest of the teachers could cut in, Nezu spoke. It's true, we failed Midoriya in more ways than one, destroying his trust within UA, ignoring his pain and suffering, his ability to function. We are all guilty. We can, however, start making it up to him. I want a full police force ready to arrest Inko Midoriya and place Midoriya into UA custody until he decides on what's next. I also want to investigate Midoriya's previous schools as they allowed these bullies to roam free. And finally, I ask that we all view what Midoriya does in this game as his therapy. It's clear his unresolved issues will cause more harm if we stop this. Of course, if he goes too far, then it's another problem entirely. And All Might, you aren't off the hook, we are going to have a talk later on. Nodding their heads, the teachers all agreed with Nezu, their guilt taking over as they turned back to the screen. All Might apologizing constantly in his head. When I awakened my quirk after All Might told me no, I thought everything would be better. I could be a hero, so of course, I enrolled into UA High School bright-eyed for the first time in a while as I stared at my dream school. I didn't have the experience as the other kids had, but I tried my best to get into Class 1A. In fact, Sato here along with all of you heroes were my classmates. I thought I could be friends with you all, but once again I was betrayed. So I thank you, heroes. You were the ones to finally open my eyes. Although I hold hate for all of you, there is one I can't for the life of me think of negatively. Confused, the teachers all waited for the reveal as seeing Izuku's eyes switch from hate-filled to love and regret, stunning them on how he flipped seemingly like a light switch. Though the more perceptive viewers had a theory for this sudden change, a self-preservation technique switching to an emotion most suitable for a situation, he was forced to learn this. But to do it now, he must need it for a plan. Gravity, you are someone I hold very dear to me, and it pains me to be fighting against you. So, please join me together. We can reach heights no one else could reach. I will give you a day to decide. We can be together, so please, I'm doing this all for you, so I ask you to ignore what I do next. Izuku's confession had the staff deeply confused, but Midnight saw exactly what was happening as she turned to the hero monitor, watching Uraraka's eyes conflicting with inner emotions, with being sad, happy, and troubled. He wanted to plant a seed of false love. Being who she was, Midnight could see that while Uraraka held Izuku deep within her heart, it wasn't the same for Izuku. Watching, the staff saw Izuku pull out a small cylinder with a button affixed atop it. I thank you all for witnessing what the heroes had created. Oh, one last thing, Bakugo, do me a favor and take a swan dive off a roof. Hearing that line, the staff thought back to Izuku's past, a childhood friend who told him to kill himself, who bullied and belittled him every day. The teachers were forced to remember the interactions between Katsuki Bakugo and Izuku Midori, the burn marks which had a very distinct pattern, Bakugo's quirk, and finally the only name Bakugo used when concerning Midori being that of the name Deku. Nezu, we need to speak with Bakugo. If what Midoriya said was true, then it was Bakugo who had been abusing and beating him as a child. We've all seen how Bakugo reacts to him. We need to do something. Standing up from her seat, Midnight went to Nezu, stating what the entire staff now knew. We will handle Bakugo after the game. For now, we will have to keep an eye out on him. Nezu giving his verdict had everybody turned to the screen as Izuku took out his butterfly knife, slashing Sato's throat, causing the staff to see a large flow of fake blood pour from the knife's point of contact as Izuku pressed a button, an alarm going off on one of the screens as the hospital Izuku contacted Nezu about finally exploded into a ball of fire. With that, Izuku laughed as he walked off screen and the video feed cut off. Seeing this, Aizawa put a hand to his ear. Sato, you're eliminated. Please wait, an ectoplasm clone will come and collect you soon. Well, now let's see how the heroes react. Turning to the screen featuring the heroes, the teachers were quickly disappointed at the state the heroes were in. Almost all of them were frozen, and while they will admit that Izuku's story would cause this, their duty as a hero came first, and it wasn't until Bakugo heard that they all scrambled into action. Seems like we need to focus on more rescue work. 13. Yes, that seems to be the case. Their response time needs improvement. If it weren't for Bakugo, it would have taken them longer. A little distracted at first, 13 responded with her criticism of the hero's actions before watching the entire group rush towards the hospital, Bakugo actually taking control and ordering everyone in specific spots, giving the teachers some hope that Bakugo can actually lead this team. Switching over a monitor, they saw Izuku putting on a large coat over his villain suit before hiding in an empty room waiting. Well, let's see how Midoriya will deal with the heroes tonight. Watching, they saw a single hero team going towards the news station while another screen displayed the news broadcast coming back on with Sato and the other hostages tied up together, not knowing the next moves Izuku will play. In a lone department studio, a pink-haired student laid over her desk. The only noises coming from her were sobbing. In front of her was a tablet displaying footage of Izuku's broadcast. Izuku. Saying the name of the person she had been watching, the girl lifted her head, revealing a teary-eyed Mei Hatsum, tears streaming down her eyes. Looking at the screen, Mei started crying even more. What she had heard had saddened her to such a devastating degree. She had never felt this type of pain before, but she didn't like it one bit. It wasn't the fact that Izuku had said some meaningless words to a chestnut-haired girl, it was before that. Mei had no idea of the abuse her boyfriend had suffered, the amount of pain and torture he was subjected to. She saw the scars that morning but couldn't believe what she saw, but Izuku's story made it so clear. The reason Izuku was acting so different was because of people all his life betraying him, hurting him. Mei couldn't believe it. She didn't care Izuku was quirkless or what he did to that big-lipped student. All she cared for was him. Looking back at the screen, Mei spoke. Izuku, I'll be there. Bowing to herself, Mei promised she won't be like everybody else. She'll be the rock Izuku could lean on, and tomorrow she was going to show it. There was no intermission as the chaos of the day continued. Izuku had just exploded a hospital before hiding in the news station he had hostage, waiting silently as heroes dealt with the fire, and another separate team was converging on his location. The teachers watched idly as their minds turned on the revelations that were revealed not even an hour before. Everyone was silent, with only one person was speaking, that of Nezu, who, while paying attention to the game, was having a very unpleasant conversation with a detective. Yes, that's correct, Inko Midoriya. Abuse, neglect, and assault on a minor. No, he has no idea this conversation is happening. Yes, I understand. Hanging up the call, Nezu placed his phone back into his vest, sighing, which the teachers noticed. So what did Naomasa say regarding young Midoriya's mother, Nezu? All Might, turning to his boss, only saw Nezu's eyes focus back on Izuku. Nothing good. While he will investigate with some officers, they can only hold her on account of suspicion to the crimes I have told him. Naomasa said, without a testimony provided by Izuku and substantial evidence, she can go scot-free, as she may have hidden any evidence regarding Midoriya's abuse and the fact it has taken this long for anyone to have known about it. But we have all the evidence we need. Midoriya himself stated this was true, not to mention the scars and recovery girl's analysis. Aizawa, standing up, was enraged at this news. He failed as a teacher already, he wouldn't fail at being a hero. While that might be the case, you do realize that if we were to use footage of Midoriya's broadcast, that would bring a detriment on the investigation. We all saw how he acted. They will brand Midoriya mentally unstable and take his testimony with a grain of salt. The best we can do is wait until the game is over. The teachers all had heard this, and sadly they had to agree, though looking at Izuku and how he really was, they hoped that he would be willing to give the testimony in the first place. The heroes arrived at the news station. Drawing attention, President Mike pointed at the screen, causing the earlier conversation to end as they watched the heroes look at the main doors of the news station, seeing almost the entire building running with chaos as civilians were screaming and banging on the doors. 13. What do you think they should do? Vlad, turning to the rescue hero, waiting for her opinion, as while they had a lot of experience as heroes, she was tailored to this type of situation. Well, if it were me, I would first make sure the area was clear. Takage could use her quirk to survey the area, making sure the villains are gone before both Kirishima and Ajiro open the doors. After that, the best option is to control the crowd, making sure they were clamped down and sending in a separate team to investigate the news station on the inside. Though with Midoriya as a villain, there are too many unknowns of what will happen. With her input, the heroes all looked at the screens, waiting if the students would follow along with the basis of what 13 had said, but looking at Izuku's eyes narrow as the hero team failed to survey the area and open the doors, they knew there was a good chance they will have to call an elimination. Aizawa sat in his chair, hands folded in front of his face, as his students opened the doors to the news station, and while he would chastise them for not surveying the area beforehand, he couldn't exactly blame them. They had seen their friend's throat get cut and they don't know if it was real or not. Though this didn't last long, as Izuku dashed out of the room he was hiding in before blending into the crowd, the teachers losing track among the screaming students. Looking back at the small group, it was Setsuna who took the lead, giving calm and clear answers while trying to calm the citizens as one clutched onto her, holding his heart. Seeing this, Vlad smiled, proud of his student. "I'm glad Takage grabbed the reins. She may not seem like it, but she is very calm in these situations. That I have to admit, but I'm glad my students are following the orders with focus. It was about time they took this seriously." Waiting, they looked at the multiple screens, witnessing Kirishima's and Ajiro's reactions, which Aizawa could only sigh. Oh my, that student is playing his role quite well. The heart attack definitely looks real, though there are some missing symptoms to suggest cardiac arrest, otherwise it is very well played out. Gesturing with her cane, recovery girl's eyes were focused on the civilian clutching Takage, but something didn't look right. Wait, wasn't that the same coat Midoriya was wearing? Midnight no longer stated that as a question, but rather as a fact. With the camera's focus on the pair, they saw a silver barrel planted in the area. Setsuna's liver was before muffled sounds came through. Vlad, please call Takage out. While she may have survived the first 2 bullets, the ones after that destroyed any hope. If this was real, she would have bled out. And with the hospital destroyed, there isn't any way for her to remotely have a chance of survival. Recovery girl narrowed her eyes, looking at exactly where the bullets were shot, and after giving her analysis, she sat back down. Sigh, very well, Setsuna, you are out. You can't move or speak. Ectoplasm's clone will come and pick you up. Just sit tight. Taking the hand off of his earpiece, Vlad watched as realization crossed Setsuna's face before the teachers witnessed Izuku's toxic green eye staring straight at Setsuna before he took the gun he was holding, legs sweeping Setsuna before hitting her in the side of the head. No matter how much Vlad wanted to protest this action, he held his tongue. Compared to what happened to Sato, Setsuna would recover from a concussion. It was sudden, but Izuku was already gone, and Tsu, having heard the louder screams, ran to the downed lizard hero, clutching her while yelling out her name. Aizawa for the first time saw one of the calmest and blunt students he ever taught break down. Midnight, while surprised about Tsu's reaction, still couldn't make heads or tails about Izuku's strategy of just taking out Setsuna when he could have easily taken out Tsu as well. Why did Midor? He's planting fear into the heroes. Sue, as most of you know, is one of strong will who barely allows her emotions to slip. But what he just did will shake anyone. Imagine yourself in this scenario. Someone who you were friends with suddenly dropped dead. The only indication of this happening was the screams of civilians as your fellow hero laid on the floor covered in blood. Interrupting midnight, Nezu looked at the screen. Midoriya was a better villain than he thought. His moves were all calculated, but they still left Nezu in the dark. This was getting frustrating for the smartest mammal. Well, it seems Ojiro and Kirishima also had quite the encounter. Hound Dog's voice brought their eyes to the screen of Kirishima and Ojiro, who not only found Sato but were dealing with another situation as well. A half-ring of hostages all tied to one another, each of them sitting still. They watched as Kirishima, taking the lead, spoke to one of the hostages. "Don't worry, you're safe now. We're here to save you. Don't. You'll kill us all." Still, even with the warning, the teachers saw Kirishima disregard this simply as the hostages panicking, but the pros could only think of how idiotic a move such as that one was. He's completely disregarding the hostages. I thought Kirishima would have the sense to listen. Sitting back, Aizawa witnessed Kirishima moving the hostage. Another idiotic move, before an explosion of red paint happened, causing the staff to sit up, initially confused by what they were seeing until it was so clear to them. Problem Child planned this from the beginning. When the feed had gone black, we thought it cut, but that was just so he could set a trap. Looking to another screen, he saw the camera that was used for Izuku's broadcast still live, showing Kirishima's failure, allowing the populace to see it. It wasn't just a trap but a setup. He's planning on diminishing faith in the heroes. Not only that, but instill a burning guilt within Kirishima to break his moral. He really did it. He killed the hostages. The staff was looking at the screen as Ojiro comforted Kirishima, but Hound Dog was running his hand through his hair. In just a day, he had 4 new patients. He saw both Tsu and Kirishima, the fear, the guilt, everything. The pair then headed out of the building, heading towards the rest of their team when the scream from the civilians had sounded. Catching up with events, the teachers saw Ojiro and Kirishima look at the broken down Tsu and apparently dead on the floor. After contacting Bakugo, the staff turned every monitor's volume down, having learned from their previous encounter with Bakugo's comm usage. "That shitty lizard bitch. Whatever, get your asses back here and help with this fire." Hearing this, the staff were yet again disappointed. The hope that Bakugo gave them about leading the team had dimmed with that. And while he did tell them to come help with the fire that was still raging on, he blatantly disregarded the death of a hero as if it were nothing and just a minor setback. Just then, Ectoplasm's clone showed up, taking both students to a separate room, which, much like the spectator room, were TVs displaying the game to its fullest, while there were beds for recuperation. Laying the students down, Ectoplasm's clone disappeared, leaving the students to rest while the original spoke. Both Sato and Takage are in the student rooms. "Well, it's my time to check up on the poor dearies." Walking out, Recovery Girl made her way to the room. Her duty as nurse already being put to the test. "Recovery Girl, make sure to keep watching and contact us if you notice an elimination that we don't." Nodding her head at Nezu's request, Recovery Girl finally left the room. Turning back to the screen, the staff were glad to see Ojiro give a rundown of the situation to the police before telling Kirishima and Tsu their orders before they all left, heading towards the fire. Switching perspectives, the fire of the hospital was still going strong. Even with Minama using Todoroki's quirk, it didn't stop the fire from spreading to nearby buildings. There were heroes rescuing the civilians still trapped and others maintaining crowd control. At least they're following some of the lessons we taught. Both Vlad and Aizawa shared the same thought. Izuku hadn't made a move just yet, so they were glad they had a moment of uninterrupted viewing as their classes worked together. "I found our villain." Turning their heads, Izuku was on the screen, his villain costume and mask affixed to his body and face, while the coat he wore at the news station still on. Watching Izuku, he stared at a single apartment building. Waiting, they saw him spark with green lightning before using a large boost of speed before climbing in at one of the top levels of the apartment building, while Tetsu and Awase were a few levels down rescuing civilians. Watching the villain willingly jump into the burning building, the staff switched screens once again as Izuku showed no sign of damage, having cleanly gone through the fire while holding his hand over a robot's mouth, stopping its wails. It didn't take long, but floor after floor Awase and Tetsu cleared them, saving civilians and sending them down to street level. It was that time that Izuku uncovered the robot's mouth, a large robotic yell escaping. "Help!" With the heroes, Tetsu and Awase rushed up the burning stairs, running towards the cry for help, when Izuku, having already twisted the head off the robot, sparked with OFA, once again taking a position before charging, hitting Tetsu, luring them in with a cry for help. He did this with Sato, yet in this situation they couldn't think twice about it. Paw on his chin, Nezu and the other teachers watched the ensuing fight as Izuku sent Tetsu through the wall before turning on Awase. The welding hero tried to use his quirk only to be punched back, but instead of letting Awase be launched back like the staff thought would happen, Izuku grabbed Awase's ankle before a loud crunch was heard through the spectator room, causing the staff to cringe. Recovery Girl hadn't said anything, so Oase was still in while Izuku stomped on the boys, sending them down several floors before Izuku spoke to the downed hero who was brought to the floor. Although I would like to enjoy this, the heat is getting unbearable. How about we continue this outside? Once again, the teachers heard Izuku's almost joking tone with what he said, but inside they felt the sharpness of a knife strike them as well. Vlad, however, felt sorry for his student again. One of his was taken down, but unlike Setsuna where there wasn't a fight, Izuku was still holding back on Oase. Come on kid, do something. Thinking that to himself, Vlad surveyed the monitors viewing inside the building, seeing Tetsu rise up from the rubble before looking down the hole, signaling Oase. Grinning, Vlad felt pride. Maybe if this worked just right they could bring down Izuku, but like the moment of pride he felt with Setsuna, it was flipped on its head as when Oase welded his hands to Izuku and Tetsu went in for a steel punch. Jacket Oase had welded to was slipped off Izuku, now coatless, switched positions, forcing Tetsu to hit Oase. Shit. There wasn't any way Oase could be conscious after that, and seeing the rage in Tetsu's eyes, Vlad could only watch as his student made a terrible mistake, swinging blind, hitting the walls of an already compromised building while Izuku dodged. Midoriya is playing Tetsu in the palm of his hand. Looking through his helmet, Powerloader, having helped build the building in the city, recognized what Izuku was doing. And why is that Powerloader? Midoriya couldn't have taken Tetsu on just as he did with Oase, but instead he dodged every attack, making Tetsu strike the support beams, which are already structurally damaged by the fire. With this he could collapse the building before anyone can escape. This was the perfect way for only Izuku to benefit, as they all saw him grab Oase after dodging and holding Tetsu away by holding a knife to Oase's neck as he back up. Put the knife down and give up. There are heroes and police everywhere. There isn't a way for you to escape. While in an unwinnable situation, the pros had to admit that trying to negotiate now was utter waste of time. With the building collapsing and with Izuku holding all the cards, it was pointless. Izuku, backing up, spoke, allowing the staff to hear his words. Real steel, you and I both know that you can't stop me. In fact, you heroes play into my hand. You're blind to the fact that you can't save everyone. Helping anybody other than yourself is idiotic. That's why Lizardy and Sugarman were both sent to an early grave. The people here will realize that you heroes can't do anything. They will see that your arrival is what killed them, not me. While it may have been a rant, more of Izuku's plan was revealed to the staff. Midoriya wants Lucifer to be a symbol. Lucifer, the angel that tried to be God, sent to hell, becoming the devil. Thinking further on it, Nezu's eyes widened, the name Lucifer making sense in his mind. The heroes are a symbol of hope for the civilians, but Lucifer wants them to view heroes as the reason they're in chaos, while he replaces them as the symbol of order. If the heroes didn't show up, everything would be fine. There wouldn't be people dead. There wouldn't be destruction. Witness what the heroes created. Nezu's realization, however, wasn't voiced out as he focused back on the screen, Izuku using his leg before kicking the wall. The building the villain and heroes were in collapsed, but before the feet in the building cut out, they saw Izuku toss Oase out of the window before jumping out himself, while Tetsu was stuck trying to escape. Switching video feeds, they found Izuku on the opposite building holding Oase before wrapping the boy's handing with the jacket that was still welded to his hands. It was after that, though, the worst came to the mind of one staff member. Focusing on Izuku, they saw him extend his arm before a black substance shot out, wrapping itself around a light pole before Izuku, using a technique very familiar to Aizawa's. All Might, seeing Izuku's second work, hardened his eyes into a glare. All for one. Midoriya has two quirks, it has to be. Getting up from his seat, All Might was about to buff up and leave the room, but Nezu's voice spoke out. Do not leave this room. Gripping the doorknob, All Might turned his head to the principal. Nezu, young Midoriya is working with All for One. How else can you explain that? I have to stop him. It's clear that he is now a 6. All Might. Yelling once again, Nezu got everyone's attention. Most of the heroes, seeing what Izuku had just done, caused them to grow suspicious as well, but Nezu once again interrupted. We will not accuse Midoriya of being a traitor once again. But sir, All Might, use your brain. OFA is an evolving quirk, is it not? You have told me that users in the past kept their original quirk and their strength grows with each user. Now think. The change Midoriya has gone through with his appearance means his quirk has evolved. Recovery Girl has stated that nothing was wrong when he first checked in, and why would he reveal this when he knows we are watching? Although he doesn't trust us. Do you really believe after what we have seen that Midoriya is nothing less than a genius? If he was sent by the low, he wouldn't tell us his past. He wouldn't reveal the information he has, and from what we have seen he could easily have killed our students. But he didn't, though he was brutal. Nothing permanent, long-lasting or irreparable has been done, so sit down. All Might couldn't defend his thoughts by what Nezu said. Everything made sense, and if Midoriya really didn't trust them, what reason would he have to tell them about a quirk? When he knows that I'll be suspicious, especially after the incident. Letting go of the doorknob, All Might sat back down. Young Midoriya, you really are worthy of OFA, and I'm sorry for what I was going to do. The other staff were in the same position. They were ready to jump in and stop Izuku as well, and although they were hesitant from what happened last time they accused him, they would do what was necessary. But Nezu stopped them once again from making a huge mistake. Going back to the screens, they saw Izuku maneuvering in a similar way Aizawa does, which had the hobo teacher thinking of how it was possible he could do pretty much the same thing. As Izuku took a position behind the heroes, bringing out his gun, the door to the spectator room opened. Recovery Girl stepping in, having done her work on Sato and Setsuna. It was then that Izuku took aim, but before he pulled the trigger, Snipe and Recovery Girl noticed something familiar as Izuku's hand twitched. His hand, it's in pain. Recovery Girl, seeing this, hopped. The boy took some painkillers soon. She had seen it firsthand when his hand pain became unbearable, and it wasn't good. Though Izuku soldiered on, firing his pistol and hitting Fukadashi on the neck. Vlad called Fukadashi out, where the bullet landed. In real life, it would have destroyed the spine, seizing all brain function and causing him to bleed out in a matter of seconds. Vlad nodded his head, disappointed he had to call yet another one of his students out, Comic Man out. After that, they watched Izuku make an escape, holstering his pistol and blending into darkness as several of the heroes turned to the direction of the building, Gyro calling out the gunshot's location. Having the cover of darkness, Izuku was able to escape, and as he took off his mask, they saw him grit his teeth, clearly in pain, as he held his right hand before tucking his mask in the suit, going through alleyways, reaching where he left a ways. The heroes had mostly dealt with the fire then, and eventually it was enough for the firefighters to take over, as Tetsu was also recovered, having been dug out of the rubble. But that the heroes, having reported the situation, left to the tower as Izuku was still on the rooftop, turning in the direction of the tower. A calculating look crossing his eyes as he looked at the hero tower. Then it vanished. Picking a waist up, Izuku unknowingly had the staff have a twinge of worry, Vlad especially, as they had seen what happened to Sato when he was captured. All was silent from then on. Izuku dropped a waist off at the villain lair before heading to his apartment, taking some painkillers before cleaning his suit and weapons. During this time, Powerloader received a call from his phone. Answering it, he was surprised by who had made the call and why. "Wait, you want to join the game? Are you sure? Things are getting serious." "Okay. Yes, you can bring whatever you want with you." Hanging up the call, the staff looked at Powerloader with present Mike asking the main question. "Who is that, Powerloader?" "It was Mei Hatsum, my support student. She said she wants to join the game and is bringing a bag with her to the city." I said it was alright, but it's odd she was never really one to join school activities unless mandatory, preferring to stay in her workshop. Nezu, hearing this, had a sneaking suspicion. Am I allowed help from different classes? That was one of the first questions Midoriya asked in MS. Hatsum joining now of all times. Though he was suspicious, Nezu decided that this would bring another level to the game, as Izuku did say a game with unknown factors is the most exciting type of game. "Very well, Powerloader. Aizawa, would you please, after our villain goes asleep, that you will bring MS Hatsum to the city?" Sighing, Aizawa knew he really had no option, so he nodded his head. Time skip. It had been hours, and Izuku was cleaning his gun still before he suddenly stood up, grabbing some C4S, leaving the apartment, catching the teacher's attention as they paid all their focus on him. They had watched the hero building earlier, and while Hound Dog was sure Tsu and Kirishima were going to be seeing him after nothing else happened for the most part, only for Uraraka and Kendo handling the press, and after the rest of the heroes went into a restless sleep while only few remained on guard, though Uraraka had entered the bathroom so they didn't focus on her. With Izuku, however, they saw him using both of his quirks, traversing the city at an alarming pace and heading towards the hero building. As Izuku arrived, they saw him use Black Whip swing to the ledges of windows before peering inside, checking each of them before he found the one he wanted while avoiding the security cameras outside the building. Hanging off the edge, the staff turned on the monitor of that room, seeing Uraraka in her towel while Tsu was shaking in her sleep. "Izuku, what did you do to her?" Uraraka's voice came through their speaker as the monitor viewing Izuku saw him pull himself up before laying on the window ledge before he spoke. "She's afraid of me, but I didn't mean for it to happen." The staff were confused watching this. Why would Midoriya reveal himself? But one hero already saw what was happening. "Was this your plan earlier, Midoriya?" Midnight couldn't help but think this, and that was Midoriya was manipulating Uraraka's love right to her face. As if this were a drama, the entire staff watched Uraraka and Izuku speak to one another. Izuku manipulating Uraraka's thinking, telling her how he could never hate her, and while it wasn't a confession, it was clear Uraraka had thought it was, so she too confessed, and just as they were going to kiss, Izuku jammed his thumb into Uraraka's neck, knocking her out. After that, Izuku stepped over Uraraka before leaving the room, shaking himself as he put on his mask, the demonic appearance continuing as the dark hallways of the hero building accentuated his glowing left eye as he stalked through the halls. Going down, they watched as he entered a single room where Kanoko and Ibara were sleeping soundly. Vlad tensed. He had a feeling this wouldn't end well for his students as Izuku went into his suit, pulling his butterfly knife before going to Kanoko. Hound Dog now was paying attention to Kanoko, wondering how the girl would react, and he wasn't surprised once it happened. When Kanoko woke up, her eyes were filled with fear. She was frozen still and hyperventilating as Izuku whispered to her, "SHHHHHH." Getting off the girl, Izuku left her alone as Vlad put a hand to his ear. "Kanoko is out. Again, the process was repeated with Ibara, though instead of killing her, Izuku simply awoke her with a startle. Vlad King had some hope that Ibara would use her vines to trap whoever attacked her, but was surprised when his student froze and her vines went slack. They saw Izuku turn Ibara's head before taunting her, putting a knife to her neck. "Don't pray to your god now. Kanoko is already dead." The teachers could only stare. They figured out what Izuku's plan was doing this, and honestly it scared them how he did so. He wanted to cause even more unrest within the hero building, finding a teammate dead in their sleep and another shocked and scared despite their usually emotionless demeanor would be a big blow to the team's moral and integrity. After some more taunting, Izuku knocked Ibara out before looking at Kanoko. "Be afraid of the Boogaman." The teachers thought their minds were being tricked, but Izuku's eye went brighter. But after that it was free game for Izuku, who going through the building started planting bombs within the hero building, such as the showers, the food storage, the capture equipment room, and finally the bathrooms. Having them planted, Izuku went back up the floors, getting back into Uraraka's room before picking the girl up, placing her in the bed before he jumped out the window using Black Whip to make his way to his apartment, where he undressed, took a shower, and went to sleep. Of course, the staff not watching that part. But that the first day was officially done, and the teachers were shocked at what Izuku can do along with all his secret. Nezu, taking the silence, turned to Aizawa. "Now Aizawa, would you please bring Ms. Hatsume to the city? She will stay within the elimination area before she officially joins." "Sure thing, I'll be back." Walking to the exit, he was stopped by Power Loader. "Aizawa, before you go, you should know May doesn't sleep in her dorm. She'll be in the workshop at this time." Nodding his head, Aizawa left the spectator room, thinking to himself, "Problem child, was this always the real you?" Despite the late hour, May Hatsume was busy at work in the support studio. She had seen the footage of that night, and to say she was pissed was an understatement. She saw how Uraraka had interacted with Izuku, even trying to kiss him, so she went to work trying to get her mind off of it, but to also create something that would be a big help in the days to come. May already had a bag of tools and small gadgets ready, but the thing that got her most curious was Izuku's new quirk. She wanted to create something for it, but without seeing it firsthand, she wouldn't know where to start, so now all she had to do was wait for the opportunity to help Izuku mentally and in the game. With that, guys, see you next video. Bye bye.